And there we go. Don't you love the dramatic music right when we get to Russ Hedge?
I noticed. I thought it was very appropriate.
I don't know how intentional that was, but it's got a great punch right at that moment.
It's wonderful.
Well, I am Scott Smith, and today I get to interview Colm O'Brien from Ireland, and you've got it in there in your name. And you've had a busy day as we were talking, but why don't you go ahead? Let's start with the introduction. Why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you are, what's going on in your world, and then we'll just get to talking about the book, life, interesting stuff, and we'll just see where the conversation goes.
Wonderful. Well, Ross, it's Ross. I'm terribly sorry. That was a mixture between Scott and Russ. I'm terribly sorry. So, Scott, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me here this evening. Well, this evening here in Ireland, and this morning in Oregon, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
So it's great to be here. Yes, I've had a busy day. I'm a business owner. I'm involved in three separate businesses, and I'm also, as of 2 days ago, I've taken over as interim general manager within a children's charity that I've been serving the board for a number of years because of some challenges in the organization. So I'm busy, which is good. And it's now 7 p.m. in the evening here in Ireland. I am just back from having spent the day in Dublin, which is 2 hours away. I'm originally from there. And I moved here to the Midwest, a lovely place called Killaloo. In County Clare, right on the banks of the Shannon River, longest river in Ireland. And I feel very blessed in my life, and really lovely to be here with you and to talk about what's going on. So I wanted to be a school teacher when I left school many years ago. That didn't happen. I didn't get the requisite academic qualifications to get into university for teacher training. And I stumbled into a career in hospitality, which I think has served me very well, in that there's immense training in hospitality. In hospitality, there's nowhere to hide. You know, you're on stage, if you like, all of the time, and it's relentless. There are always customers to be looked after. So as I say, you're always on stage. So I got some tremendous training there, spent 20 years, 2 decades working for other people, and then decided to bet on myself and stepped into my first business. And that was very exciting until it failed. And then it wasn't so exciting anymore. But the wonderful thing about that, Scott, is that's where the book came from.
Yeah.
Because I decided to chronicle the journey from corporate to self-employed and it bombing. But that has led me on this wonderful journey. So today, following that business failure, I've got the book out. I have a second book in the works, and I'm involved in 3 separate businesses. So I've rebounded because one of the phrases I've come up with over the years is sometimes I win and sometimes I learn.
Yes, I remember that from the book, and the chapter title there was sometimes I win and sometimes I ... And we get to fill in the blank. And normally people would say I get to win and lose.
You get to lose. That's exactly it. Yeah.
And I love that. I love that you get to learn.
Well, you see, I think it's true. You know, professionals never lose, right? Professionals never lose in any field. You take a sports team that you might be a fan of, right? Professional sports team. They don't always go out and put enough points on the board to be considered winners on the night. Okay, that's fact, right? But professionals don't lose. They go back to the dressing room and they go back to the training camp and they watch the video and they watch the replay and they see, well, Scott was out of position at that time and Colm was out of position at that time. So they never lose. They either win or they learn. Okay, so we need. I believe I'm a professional. You're a professional. People watching and listening are professionals. So professionals never lose. We either win or we learn. Only two choices.
Yeah, it's learning how to learn is also the important thing. And especially in today's world, it's not just what do you learn the information, but because it's going to be obsolete so quick, but how do you stay current?
Yeah, really, really valid point. I literally have come off of Zoom, I think I mentioned to you just before the show, with some teenagers, because one of my businesses is a business called Wigwam, which we might touch on in a moment, but it's a coaching business designed originally for entrepreneurs, but now we've seen that the material has multiple uses, so we're bringing it to teenagers at the moment. And in speaking to younger people, we're talking to them about that very fact, that they can win or they can learn, right? And all the good stuff around that. So, sorry, back to you, Scott.
No, that's right. I mean, that's exactly right. We'll definitely want to talk about this. I was involved for 5 years with an organization called Young Entrepreneurs Business Week, which was business camp for high school students. And unfortunately, it was a victim of the whole COVID shutdown, because we did camps for a full week with these high school students, and they would come in and find a problem and basically write a business plan. They would learn about business, and then they would write a business plan during the week, and then they would pitch it to actual angel and venture capital investors and other business professionals at the end of the week as a competition. And some of these students will amaze you. And I know, I'm sure we're going to share some of the same experience in that. When people look to the youth, and it's always been, we have this generational problem where the older folks that are moving out of power are looking at the young folks that are coming up and eventually going to be in power, and thinking about our future of being some sort of a combination between hell and a handbasket. But when you actually spend time with these students, you realize, hey, we are fine, because there's some smart kids out there.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? Our parents thought the same. Every generation thinks that the generation coming up behind them is less than. I would tend to share your optimism, and we've just come literally off a Wigwam to have this conversation with you, and I'm very excited about the young people. And while we would like more young people to step up, we probably would like more adults to also step up, Scott, if truth be known, right? I mean, but there are always leaders in every generation. And all we need are a few good men. Wasn't that a movie? A few good men, right? Or women to step up.
Yeah,
lots of people and lead the charge. And with that, it will be fine. We as a species are in crisis at the moment. Our planet is in crisis at the moment. Clearly, we've got a global warming significant challenge. We have a pandemic which has overtaken all of it, and we've got to figure our way out and through. But I believe human ingenuity over the years has always won through. When challenges get presented, we figure out together how to resolve them.
Well, and we are a resilient group of people. Where you would think that some things that would completely shut us down, but don't. We rebound even stronger than before.
We do, and that's why I've got the book Feeding Johnny, because I left. Nice segue there. I left the corporate world. I spent 20 years working for somebody else. Somebody else was cutting my paycheck. Why did I do that? Because that's what my dad did, and that's what his dad did, and that's what his dad did, and that's what his dad did. So that was all I knew. Had I managed to get into teacher training college back then in 1980 when I left school, when I left high school, I would have been the first of my generation, my family, to attend university.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't even happen, right? So I just followed suit. I got a job, and I worked hard and got promoted and all those good things. Came across a phrase some time back, Scott, and it's not in the book because it's post publication of the book. It's called the Furlong Mousetrap. It's this concept that the corporate job, the well-paid corporate job, is like a furlong mousetrap. It's warm, it's cozy, it's comfortable, it's safe, but it's a trap, right? It's got the company car, it's got the mobile phone, it's got dental, right? It's got all the stuff, right? And but however, there's a cohort of people out there, I believe, in corporate that really are straining at the leash. They would love to be brave enough to step out, but it's scary outside the furlong mousetrap. Okay, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth it, right? And I'd love to think that maybe over time we can help more people escape, because there's huge talent there, but there's a lid on that talent, in my opinion.
Well, it's interesting because I've been working for myself for about 8 years, and it's always been the dream for me to do that. But it certainly wasn't the way I was raised. Like you, I was a part of the school system that was engineered to turn me into an employee. All of my teachers said, when you go to work, when you work for this company, when you want to be a good employee and all these things. And so everything that I had lined me up to that. And then when you make that switch, or you contemplate that switch, the questions that you get are, Colm, how can you stand the uncertainty of working for yourself? And my thought is that when you're an employee, when you work for a company, you're still an independent contractor, but you only have one customer.
Oh, that's a great way of looking at it.
And so your income is binary. So what if you had 5 customers that all paid you equally? Because things happen in business. We went through this whole pandemic and businesses had to lay people off. Some of the businesses completely shut down. And so the people who had that binary income, it went to zero, because it's either 1 or 0. And but if they had 5 customers and one of them, well, it's a 20% hit. I mean, it doesn't feel good, but it's better than 0.
I don't live in an earthquake zone, right? I'm not sure if Oregon is on the fault line there. Is Oregon?
They talk about so we're off the coast here. There's the plates are subducting there, and just to the east of me we have the Cascade Mountains, which are all volcanic.
Okay.
And they talk about someday,
okay,
80 zone, but we're not like California to the regular shakers.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, and movers and shakers down there. Look, I just the reason I raised that at all is I've never been in an earthquake, but I have to assume, and we've seen it on video. In an earthquake, nobody stands tall. Everybody gets down on all fours or lies prostrate on the ground, right? So I liken the corporate job, as you say. You're a contractor with only one customer, and it's like standing on one leg, right? Yep. And so if there's any shake at all and you're standing on one leg, well, you've got a problem, right? If you can somehow stand on 2 legs, so if you've got two customers, to use your analogy, aren't you better off? What if you have 4? What if you have 6 or 10? So I agree with you 100%, but that doesn't mean that it's not scary to take that first step. That's the biggest jump.
Yeah. Well, and my general advice to people is start with a side hustle. Start with some sort of a business that you can operate while you're maybe doing your 9 to 5, your day job, or as some people like to call it, a real job, meaning that. When you work for yourself, it's not a real job, but but I tell people, start with something that you can do, because the research says something like this. Here in the U.S., on the average, this is on the average, people watch 5 hours of television every day. 5
Okay.
hours. That's an average. And maybe some of the people here are not average, plus or minus, but on the average American, and you could say, oh my gosh, what a tragedy. What a waste of time, 5 hours watching television. But to me, my perspective is that on the average, Americans have 5 hours of discretionary time, right? Discretionary time every day, 5 hours. They just don't know what to do with it.
Mm.
So you're watching so why not take 1 hour a day
Yeah.
and allocate it toward a business?
Yep.
And you don't have to start feeding. How many meals do you guys do every day with feeding?
We supply about 30,000 meals every day.
Yeah. So you don't need to start off by feeding 30,000, putting
No,
30,000 meals out.
We started with 27, as in only 27, less than 30. Right?
As I recall, you were the one delivering those 27 meals.
Yeah. I was producing them and delivering them and invoicing for them and buying the product to put in them. But everything. But come here, Scott. I'm on the same page as you, 100%. We got to use. If somebody is wondering, is there life beyond the corporate world for them? If they've got that itch, they need to scratch that itch I fully agree with you, by using some discretionary time. I haven't heard that phrase before. By the way, I was talking about you today in Dublin, my friend. I was referring to this gentleman that I was meeting this evening, who is a motivational listener. I just think it's the very best description I've ever come across.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. So you were spoken about probably while you were asleep in the early hours.
Very likely.
Very likely. But no, I agree with you, Scott, entirely. That's the opportunity. It's to start with a side hustle in whatever you're passionate about.
Right.
If whatever you're passionate about, figure out a way of starting. Another phrase I came across over the years, we've spoken about, sometimes I win, sometimes I learn. Another one that I'll ask you perhaps to complete for me is, everything worth doing is worth doing.
Worth doing right.
Okay, so allow me correct you, my friend. Right?
I knew it was coming, but I'm like, you're the guest, so I'm going to walk into it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for going with the flow. So everything worth doing is in fact worth doing badly. Let me explain that. Everything worth doing is worth doing well or right, as you correctly say. That is absolutely true. But you can only do it right when you start. And when you start anything, let's be honest, you're going to start badly, right? Get over it. You're going to do your very best, but it won't be as good on day one as it is on day 101. Okay? Right. So anything worth doing that you want to do right, you must be willing to do it badly at the start. And I actually think that's something that holds many people back, if I may suggest, sure. Scott. I think they're waiting for all the stars to align, all the traffic signals to, go green between, Oregon and San Francisco or whatever, right? I don't know how the system works over there. When all the stars align, when I've got my website absolutely perfect, when I've got my business cards, please don't wait. Please don't wait, because it'll never be perfect. Start and figure it out as you go is my recommendation. Side hustle, love that. Take Scott's advice. Start with side hustle.
One of the things, and I want to get to the point where we talk about how you went through this whole progression where you talked about being involved in the hospitality industry, in restaurants. And every time I go to a restaurant, I am very grateful that somebody wants to run one, because that is just a hard business. And as you mentioned, you're working nights, weekends, holidays. When everyone wants to have fun, that's when you have to go to work.
And that's why I'm not in hospitality anymore.
And we'll talk about how this happened, because sometimes we would like to think that life is more intentional than it is. Because a lot of times when we talk to people, they say, well, how did you get involved in whatever it is you're doing, and becoming an accountant and becoming an engineer and becoming a school teacher? In many cases, they start off by saying, well, it's really an interesting story, which means they had no plan. And it might have even come about because they sat next to somebody on a bus or a train.
Yeah. Well. Now that you mentioned that,
And I'm looking. We've got some great comments. We got Drew Shockley and David Brown
hey, Drew, good to see
in
you.
here too. And what we can do is that's why I'm looking over here because I'm looking at their comments.
Wonderful.
And maybe we'll get in some Q&A here a bit.
That sounds great. But you mentioned the train, so shall I tell my man on the train story because it's pivotal?
I love that.
All right, okay. So here's the story. I wanted to be a school teacher. Now, I was 17 at the time, a long time ago, and the reason I wanted to be a school teacher was because of short hours and long holidays. That's how I saw school teaching. It was nothing. It wasn't about saving the world. It wasn't about educating the next generation. It was purely selfish motivation. Right? What's the easiest thing I can do here? Anyway, I always say that the man upstairs, the big man upstairs in charge, he had a different plan, and he said, "No way, O'Brien." And he threw me into hospitality, which is, as you described earlier, it's exactly the opposite. It's whenever anybody else is on holiday, have their weekends off, we're working flat out, right? And to be honest, I loved it. For many years, I loved it. I was 17, 18, in my 20s. It's a young man's, young woman's game, and it's great fun. If you get into it, it really is great. But by the time I got into my 30s, all of a sudden I was tired, right? And my what age was I? I think it was 35 when I eventually bet on myself and stepped out. But I also stepped into a restaurant because it was what I knew at that stage. So that was tough. And that business that I was running a very famous cafe here in Ireland, in Dublin, called Bewley's Cafe on Grafton Street. Extremely famous here in this side of the world. And if you're ever in Dublin, you must go there. It's one of those you must go to places. And I was the general manager there from a very young age 28 to 32 for 4 years. And it was great. I was cranking along in my career. It was going really well. But then I hit sort of a wall, and I began to get a speed wobble in my career and began to really ask, what am I doing? And I'd positioned myself to work hard for the rest of my life, unless I took charge, right, of me and what I was doing in my discretionary time. I was destined to work that hard for the rest of my life. So I began to make some changes. And at 35, between 32 and 35, I became franchise manager for that particular brand. And my job changed from being operational to going around the island of Ireland and helping others set up their own Bewley's restaurants, okay? Because I had all that experience. But I still wasn't betting on myself. I was still being paid by the man, right? At age 35, an opportunity presented itself, actually on my 35th birthday, to become involved in one of those franchised restaurants. And 10 weeks from asking a particular question, because the universe moves really quickly, as you know, when the stars align, and the time is right, it happens really quickly. 10 weeks from that date, I was living in an entirely new city with having bought my own restaurant, or the banks bought my own restaurant, okay? And that was wonderful and scary and all those things at the same time. Actually, here's something very interesting, if I may. Day one of owning my own restaurant, that first Monday, I was more scared than I'd ever been in my life. Here I was sitting in a restaurant that the previous Friday was owned by somebody else, and I knew how to run it. Came out of my fingertips. I knew everything about that brand, that whole concept, the cafe environment. And I was scared stiff like a new baby on day one. It's quite a phenomenal thing to experience, okay? Because I'd been doing this stuff for 20 years at this stage, right? Sure. Anyway, that business failed. Not on day one. It went really well. Okay, once I got stuck in, it went really well for a number of years, and then a whole series of things. And I speak about it in the book. A perfect storm came together, and the business failed. Then I met the man on the train. So the business was failing. I also thought, by the way, Scott, that when a business fails, it would just fail overnight. You wouldn't see it coming. That's not true. We know what's going to happen. And you'll have to read the book, by the way, to find out what the perfect storm was. But I'll tell you what happened thereafter. Knew the business was failing. And I was on a train to Dublin from Limerick, which is about a 2-hour train ride, to visit an expansion of that business that I had hoped would save the day. I was setting up little coffee shops in Dublin. And I met a man on the train. I gave him my business card, as you do, as we do in business. We swapped business cards. And on my business card, it had a strap line. It said, "How can I help?" And he latched onto that and he said, "What does that mean?" And I said, "It's my offer to the universe. If I can help you in any way, pick up the phone." So he never picked up the phone. But 3 months later, his boss picked up the phone and said, that man you met on the train 3 months ago, he's left our organization. And this is the really interesting thing for me, Scott, is that in those intervening 3 months, that man went off a completely different path. It was that moment in time where he and I met. He went back to his boss that evening and said, I met this guy on the train. Here's his business card. Interesting character. He says, how can I help? If you're ever doing anything with food, give him a shout. 3 months later, his boss was doing something with food, rang me, and we supplied 27 school lunches that, within a few weeks of that. Right. And today I'm talking to you and we supplied 30,000 children today. Yeah. The man on the train moment.
Yeah. Again, this is like, so how did you get involved in this? Well, it's a very interesting story. There's actually research around this that, and we could have picked probably any time along your career here, going back from when you wanted to be a teacher. It's the research, what it's titled is The End of History Illusion. And so what it says is that at any point in time, if we just said, do you think you're going to be supplying meals a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Do you think you'll be? And we pretty much think, yeah, we've reached the end of our history, right? The end of our evolving, the end of our changing. We've reached the penultimate of who we're going to be, that we'll eat in the same restaurants, listen to the same music, have the same friends, live in the same house. But if we look back over the last same period of time, year, 5 years, 10 years, we can very accurately describe the different changes that we've gone through and how we've evolved, if you will. But if we went back 1 and 5 years, we would have thought we were going to be the same. Yeah. That is, we continually underestimate how much we're going to change and what's going to influence us. Yeah. And so it's it could be just that seemingly chance moment of meeting an individual on the train who didn't throw your business card away, didn't stuff it in his drawer, didn't take it in his box of goods when he left, but he actually handed it to his boss with a comment that said, if you're going to start food.
Yeah, and if I may just expand on that, because this is really important, okay? We're all trained to network. We sort of do the network thing to death at times, right? And back pre-COVID, networking was largely done face-to-face, and it was, enter a room and bring your business cards and, like in Vegas.
Right. Yep. Blackjack dealers.
Yeah, and let's be honest, that's a waste of perfectly good trees. Let's be honest, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're going in the waste paper basket. What changed? What prompted that man to give my card to his boss was the strap line. No strings attached. How can I help? Not what can I sell you? Not what will you buy from me? Mm-hmm. No strings attached. Nothing to do with my career. Nothing to do with the fact that my business was failing, and I knew it was failing. I wasn't panicked. I wasn't desperate. It was a genuine offer to the universe. If I can help you, you pick up the phone. If you think I can help you, and if I can help you, I will. And if I can't help you, I'll talk to Scott. Maybe Scott can help you. Right.
Right.
So the two criteria that must apply, in my opinion and in my experience, because I believe, by the way, that there's a man on the train moment, metaphorically speaking, for all of us, anybody who's listening to this or watching this, right, at any point in time.
Sure.
If these two criteria exist, number one, we must be out there in the marketplace. The man on the train, that guy who changed my life, would never have found my home in Limerick, knocked on the window and said, I'm sorry to disturb your TV watching, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. Go back to what you said at the start, right? I'm sorry to disturb your discretionary time that you're choosing to put into TV watching. I've got this idea that will change your life. Scott, that could never have happened in a million lifetimes, okay? Mm-hmm. So the first thing that must happen is, to our listeners here, you must be out there doing your thing. That's the first thing. If you're not out there doing your thing, it's not going to happen. Second thing, because I'm preaching to the choir here. If you're even watching this, you're out there doing your thing. Thank you and well done, right? So the second thing, so important, serve, don't sell. Go out there and serve first. I even wrote a blog about it, created a vlog about it. Stop selling, start serving. Okay. Mm-hmm. Had I handed him my card and said, here, buddy, my business is struggling. Of course, I wouldn't have said that, but here, buddy, can I sell you coffee? Here, buddy, can I sell you sandwiches? he'd have put my business card in the trash can with every other business card he got.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
The strap line was what made the difference. And I'd recommend your audience add that to your strap line. There's no franchise fee attached to it, right? No royalties needed.
That's right. No copyright, no registration.
Your name, your phone number, your email address, and that strap line. How can I help? And watch and be genuine about it. Okay.
That's right.
No strings attached. And then write to me and tell me the magic that's happened.
Well, I love that. So networking is so when you get to the end of the book and you have the story is just fascinating as you go through. And I think a lot of us can relate to it, even though we weren't necessarily directly involved in the in that industry, but we have similar experiences going through our lives. But at the end of the book, you go through the 10 points, 10 things to that we can take away from this. And number 4 is network. And obviously, I mean, that's a huge thing for me as a motivational listener. And the application for that is one of those applications is around networking. And just to rant for a moment, when COVID came and people said, "Oh, we can't be face to face anymore. Everything's virtual, and so no longer can we network." Well, networking has never been. I would say networking has never been about playing golf. The golf was just an opportunity for people with a shared interest, a common interest, to spend time together. And then they got, as they say, know, like, and trust. And then eventually, hey, call them. By the way, my friend over here has a school, and they heard about your. Can I make an introduction? And this is the way it works. And so it's not about the golf. It's just having a common interest and community. So communities are built around shared interest or a shared hardship. And obviously, with COVID-19 and the way the world is connected today, we as a world community had a shared hardship. So you have something in common with every person in the world because of this. And so you have a way to connect to people. And so networking was never put on hold. It just accelerated. And it's not about handing out 100 business cards, or as you talked about in your book about the speed networking. It's not about just getting involved with a bunch of people. It's about going to meet a few people. So in my book, which is on the carousel there right next to yours, I talk about when I go to networking events, I would take 5 or fewer cards, because my goal wasn't to become a blackjack dealer and hand them all out. My goal was to fill a particular void in my network. It might be there's 5 roles, and one of those is partner. And partners are people who solve problems that you don't solve, but allow you to add value into your network. That is call them, who's your plumber? Right? And you say, oh, this is the person, this is the company that I use. Oh, you trust them? Yeah, they do good work. Okay, then that's who I'm calling. Yeah. That's how you add value into the network. And I love it. I love that part.
It's really interesting to hear you comment on that, because I'm well impressed that you would attend a networking event, whether online or offline, and you'd go in there strategically. And I've heard that approach. As you say, you're going with 5 or fewer cards, and you're going with a very specific intention. I was never that disciplined, to be honest, right? So I found myself. No, but I tell you what I found myself doing. I found myself arriving back in pre-COVID times when it was face-to-face stuff. Two habits that I had. One, I'd walk into a room and I'd ask, almost like a prayer, I'd ask, who am I supposed to meet today? Right? Who am I supposed to meet today? And trust that the universe would bring somebody to me. The second thing I would do, and this is a learned habit. I come across as quite confident, I suppose, perhaps back to my hospitality training. I'm not afraid of being in front of people. So I've used that, but that's not necessarily me at a deep level, okay? But I've used that training to, in a physical physical networking event, to actually be the first person to put out my hand and say, "Hi, my name is Colm," because that breaks the ice for me, but it also breaks the ice for the other person who doesn't quite know how to make that start.
Right.
And I was involved with BNI. I'm quite sure you've come across BNI over the years. I'm involved with BNI here in Ireland for a number of years on 2 separate occasions, and we were taught that, and we were taught VCP, visibility, credibility, profitability. So true. But it starts with putting out the hand and say, "Hi, I'm Colm," and then you find out what's going on for that individual, and by listening to them, you realize that, well, the right person, I could really do with introducing you, Johnny, to Scott. Come over here. Here's Scott. Scott, this is Johnny. This is what Johnny does. Johnny, this is Scott. This is what Scott does. And then I step away. And that's the beauty of connecting. And the most important thing for me is connect for no agenda, except to be of value to both Scott and Johnny. And we're back to, how can I help? How can I help? I believe I could find anybody and get to speak to anybody if I so chose, because of that approach. Because over 30 years at this stage, I'm a trusted networker. I will never bring anybody to Scott that I believe would harm Scott, and I would never bring Scott to anybody if I felt Scott would harm that individual. Ever. Wouldn't happen. I'd one experience years ago, actually in BNI, where a new guy arrived into the group and he was all excited and he signed up and he was a new member. And within a week, he latched onto the fact that I had a school lunch business, and his particular expertise was around food safety training or something. Okay. And he rang my company, and they said, "No, we're sorted with that. Thank you very much indeed." He didn't ring me, he rang my company. So then he rang me, and he said to me, "Hang on a second, I've just joined BNI 2 weeks ago, and you've got this company, and I provide that service, and you're using somebody else for that service. Surely you should be using me." So I said, "Come here a second, buddy. Come here, right?" Yeah. And I sat him down, right, in a hotel, and I said, "You need to learn what this is all about. I don't know you from Adam. You've got to earn your stripes here, VCP. Just because you signed up and paid your few bob to become a member."
That's right.
And that guy never got near my company, right? Ever. All right, sorry. Rant over. Back to you, Scott.
BNI is a great organization.
Great organization. Oh, come here. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah. I have been a part. I've been a member. Yeah.
Great.
And it's
huge fan.
Certain types of businesses. If you have a localized brick and mortar store, trades, certain services are really good in BNI. And Dr. Ivan Meisner, who founded that, he likes to bill himself as the father of modern networking. What I really find BNI to be is more of it's a referral organization, not so much a networking organization. But what it really does on the networking side for people is give them a structure. Because as you said, you would go into events without necessarily a plan. BNI gives you a very defined structure, and it helps the people who don't know what they're doing. But I do coach people around networking because there is a structure. There is a science to how we connect, and reasons behind what we do. And but some people are like, I had a client. He was the engineer's engineer, heart of Silicon Valley in California, and he told me, "Scott, anytime I go to a networking event, as soon as I walk in, the first thing I think about is, how long do I have to stay before it's rude for me to leave?"
Wow.
You're never going to meet the man on the bus that way.
No. There's a great friend of mine here in Ireland, Jerry Duffy. I don't know if you met Jerry Duffy yet.
I don't think I have.
Jerry Duffy he's like you, except he's a motivational speaker, where you're a motivational listener, right? And both experts in your field, right? He's a wonderful guy. I must introduce you. Sorry, where was I going with Jerry? You said something there. Oh my goodness, what was my train of thought?
About the networking and the man on the bus.
Oh no, it's gone. Oh my goodness, one of those moments. I'm terribly sorry. Forgive me.
We'll get him.
It'll come back. It'll come back. Yeah. I told you I was talking about you in Dublin today, and the reason I was because I was actually invited on another podcast this morning in Ireland, and it was with this another lady I need to introduce you to, Jean Evans, and she's a master networker, and she teaches networking. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Now back to Jerry Duffy. I know what it was, right? He said this guy in Silicon Valley. His first thing when he got into the room was how quickly can I get out of here, right? Yeah. Jerry Duffy went to New York City from Ireland to network to some event that was happening, and he made a decision. And he's definitely not the front and center type of guy. He's definitely an introvert, right, by nature. And he made a decision that he was going to be the last man standing. He was going to be the first in the room and the last to leave the room. And he said it got really difficult for him. He was first in the room filled up, and then as the room began to empty, and it was this, he was on Ireland time. He was tired, right? He's in New York City. It's 3:00 in the morning. In his body, it's sort of 8 p.m. or whatever, right? He was tired, and he kept saying to himself, "No, you promised you'd be the last man out." So eventually, the room empties out, and it's just him and one other guy, and they're walking out the door. And the guy was from American in New York, and they started talking, and why are you here? And Jerry explained why he was here. That guy has been Jerry's biggest client ever since.
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
Story, yeah. You know, with events, it's always been my practice to come early and stay late. Now, I may not try to be the first and be the last, but I was down in San Diego at Social Media Marketing World, and the big event, and they've got the band playing, and it's this all-star professional musicians, right? And they're introducing them, and they get to the bass player. His name was Reggie McBride, and Reggie McBride, bass player for Stevie Wonder. And I'm like, okay, I've heard of him. And same thing. I'm late. I'm not the last person there, but I'm staying late. And here comes Reggie McBride. He's got his bass in a gig bag, and he's walking out. And I just, the other thing is you have to be willing to say something, right? I mean, you have to be willing to, as you say, to put your hand out. And so I just, wow, you're the bass player for Stevie Wonder. And so we started talking, then we sat down, and then I asked him, would it be okay? And I have a little digital audio recorder with me and a little Zoom handheld recorder. And I asked, would you mind if I record this? And we had this conversation. He told me all about when he grew up in Detroit. His dad was an electrician in the auto industry. He was this child prodigy. It was like when he was 12 years old, Aretha Franklin and her band, they said, oh, we want you to tour in Europe with us. And his dad's like, you're 12 years old. You're not going to Europe. But he did end up in a band that opened for James Brown. And he said the musicians there were very encouraging and supportive, and he learned a lot of stuff. And he said one day he's at home and the phone rings and it's Stevie Wonder.
Incredible.
And he hung up. We go, no, this is not Stevie. No, this is Stevie Wonder. And he ended up playing for many, many different musicians that we would all know. But I had this conversation with him, and I was able to capture that and put it into a podcast because I was willing to stay late and put my hand out, just as you have said.
Well done, well done. It reminds me of Wayne Gretzky. I'm sure you know Wayne Gretzky. One of his sayings that I've adopted is, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." He was the highest scoring, as I understand it, in his field, but he was also he also made the most misses. Because he took more shots than anybody else. So you've just demonstrated that. You could have not put your hand out. You would have missed the moment. When you put your hand out, you could have not invited him to allow you to record something. You did both those things, and you took a shot both times, and you scored both times. Yeah. Had you not taken a shot, this wouldn't have featured, right? Of course, had you taken a shot and you asked him, "Would you mind if I recorded that?" He could have told you no, but that would have been fine too.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
But he was never going to invite you. Would you like to record this conversation? That was never going to happen, right? You've got to take the lead, and I got to take the lead.
He was so gracious. One of the things that I'd like to do is just kind of run through some of these. Is there kind of when we go another 10 or 15 minutes, but I'd like to kind of look at, because I know it's dinner time there for you
Don't worry about
in
that.
Ireland, but to kind of run through, we talked to that number 4 on your list of things is networking. Number 1 is define the big picture for your life.
Okay.
And maybe I can just kind of ask it. We can maybe we'll speed date through some of these.
Okay. Let's speed date through this, right? And you'll have to remind me. It's a while since I read the book. So you'll have to remind me what's in it, right?
I got my notes, by the way.
Yeah, good. Okay, so define the big picture for your life. So important, right? The late great Stephen R. Covey is, in my opinion, one of the great thought leaders. And so his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, great stuff. But begin with the end in mind. You know, right. you've got to figure out where you would like it to end up. Another phrase that we teach in Wigwam the whole time is, too many people live life like they are reading a novel, waiting to see how it all turns out. That's how we read a novel. That's the attraction in novels, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about people you know. How many people are living their life waiting to see how it all turns out? I'd like to think that you and I we've realized that we're in fact, which is true for everybody, by the way, we're in fact the ones holding the pen in our hands, right? So we got to begin with the end in mind. Define the big picture for your life. What does it look like? How will you know that it has been a success for you? And again, a Stephen Coveyism is, go to your 80th birthday and look back. And the wonderful thing, and we would have heard as well, write your eulogy, but at that stage you've passed, okay? Far more powerful, in my opinion, to go to your 80th birthday and you're in the room and you're listening to what they're saying about you. Right? To go to your 80th birthday and write the story of that day. Mine is the 30th of March, 2043. It's a Monday. Figure out what date your 80th birthday is on, what day of the week it's going to be on, right? And look back from that vantage point and define your life around that. Define the big picture for your life. It's not all about money or cars or guitars or fame or any of that type of stuff, right? That may be part of it, maybe for some people, right? But who's going to be there? What are they going to say about you? Will they be there? Will they want to be there? There's a big question, right? So there you go. Define the big picture for your life, not just your career picture, the big picture for your life, right?
Yeah. It was
moving swiftly on. Speed dating.
Isaac Asimov wrote so many novels, and he always said he knows the beginning and he knows the end, and the journey was the writing process, and he didn't know where that would go. So I love that. Start with the end in mind. So the next thing was you said that time management doesn't work. And I think this is one of those things that everyone's talking about time management, and and here's Colm saying time management doesn't work.
Yes. Okay. I got called over the holes, or hauled over the coals, I should say. Called over the hole. Hauled over the coals. I'm tired now at this stage. Hauled over the coals in Wigwam for this particular point. I was going through a presentation on why time management doesn't work, and one guy, instead of engaging with the program, he went off to Google how many times Google says time management actually does work. What's this guy O'Brien talking about? But so what I was talking about was if time management, and this is really important to get across, if time management alone were all it took for us to be successful materially, well, then every mother of 4 young children would be multimillionaire. Fact, because every mother of 4 young children, say 4 children under the age of 5 or 6, right? They know how to manage time, because if they don't know how to manage time, they will die, right? Just to get through from one end of the day to the next, from the start of the day to the end, they must know how to manage time. So if that is true, well, then it's not the time, the management of the time that makes the difference. It's what we do with that time. So it's not about managing time. It's about managing our priorities. What are we doing within that time? Yeah, we're back to discretionary time, Scott. We're back to spending 5 hours in front of the tube.
Yeah. So I love that, because and this is a concept we have to we have to take into account too is that we know that a day has 24 hours.
Yep.
And that there is no hour of any day that you have not used.
Correct.
And that means that if you're going to do something new, like take on a side business, you're going to have to stop doing something else.
Yep.
And so we can't ever add anything new. And so you're 3 businesses, right?
Yeah, 3 businesses, and I'm general manager of a charity.
So let's move on to the next number 3, which is be open to new ideas.
Really important. We touched on this earlier, you and I. We were talking about the history, the beginning of the end. I can't quite remember the phrase that you used, but had somebody said to me before Carambola, which is the school lunch business, happened, that I would be involved in school lunches, I probably would have said no. I touched on this in that podcast I was on this morning in Dublin, that too many people, you know this phrase that we say, and I believe it to be true, never, ever, ever give up, right? Mm-hmm. I think people have a mistake that for, they're beating their head against a particular door that's just not opening for them, right? They've been beating their head against it for 5 years, still not opening, right? But they're ignoring over in the corner of their life, they're ignoring a door that's flapping open, right? With opportunity. And the universe is saying, Scott, come on.
Squeak, squeak.
Yeah, squeak. And we're beating our heads against the door over here. So the never give up, I absolutely believe in it, but it's never give up on you.
Right.
There are times when you may have to give up on this door and stop beating your head against it and actually just peer behind the door that's flapping open and see what's there. So be open to new ideas. I believed I was going to set up a coffee shop chain. Mm-hmm. I'm now in 3 businesses and none of them are involved in coffee shops.
There's a phrase that's very popular because, of course, on your side of the Atlantic, it's Dragon's Den. Over here, it's Shark Tank. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of popularized a lot of the entrepreneurial work. And one of the phrases that has gone along with this is fail fast.
Yes.
Which I am not a fan of failing fast. Because as you said, I'm not here to fail. I'm going to win. And we'll talk about that in point 9. But I think it's make a decision.
Okay.
You're not failing. It's I'm trying this. Oh, this door is not working. I'm going to stop because I think over here there's a better deal. Oh, look, this door is open.
Absolutely.
So make a decision fast.
Really well put.
And so the next point, of course, we talked about networking. So it's number 4. Number 5 is to be flexible.
Yeah, you're gonna get punches. You got to roll with the punches. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. No battle plan survives. Yep. It just never happens and you know why? Because the enemy hasn't read the script. When we do this,
this is my part.
Yeah, this is what I okay. So the same, and it's not to say our customers are the enemy. They're not, right? But so we come up with this idea. We're going to sell widgets, and they're going to be the best widgets on the planet, and everybody's going to want them. And we go to the marketplace with our widgets, and people don't want them, right? Mm-hmm. So because we haven't thought something through. So you roll with the punches.
Yeah,
roll with the punches. Yeah, you've got. I think I even talk about the Californian great redwoods, if I'm not mistaken, in that.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Because they've learned over millennia to they underneath the ground their roots interlock, right? And they've grown to these incredible heights and survived millennia. And they've survived storm and fire and everything, and earthquakes. Yeah. Because they're flexible, right? They're able to roll with the punches, and they've got each other for support. Hugely important. Okay, there you go.
So and that goes back to the number 4 about networking. Is that you need that support. You're not going to try to now, especially in America, we like the Lone Ranger. We like the person that's going to go out and supposedly tackle the world by themselves, but in reality, that's not true. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. I think so. Number 6 was read and study. And I put in the carousel the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Oh,
Now, I have to say, because you talk about self-improvement, you're reading this book, you didn't even realize you were 21 years old. You didn't even realize that it was a self-improvement book. That book was I think required reading when I was like 12, sixth grade, something like that. And I don't know if we read it or if the teacher read it to us, but I remember one point in there where Jonathan Livingston Seagull is pretending to be a falcon, and he flies up high and he pulls his wings in tight to get that dive, not like a seagull with his wings out, but he pulls them in to build that speed up. And so tell me about reading and learning.
yeah. I'm delighted that you reminded me of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, because, as I say in the book, that was the first motivation book I ever read in my life, and I didn't know it was a motivation book. I got it as a gift on the night of my 21st birthday, and I went home from the party, and I sat up all night in my bed reading that book, and I read it till dawn, and I was pumped. Right, I just didn't know what had happened. I was absolutely pumped. Of course, you say that to other people, and they say it's about seagulls, and they're missing the point entirely. Right. But I loved that book. I loved everything about it, and it set me off on this journey. There's another. I'm a Disney fan, Scott, and Pocahontas, one of those movies that I really enjoyed.
I'm here with you.
Happy day, good stuff.
Date night at Disneyland. Got my
hey, there you go, there you go. I love it. Okay, so and we went to Disneyland, by the way, for our 40th birthdays and our 50th birthdays. We're going back for our 60th birthdays. That's Disneyland for me, and we might bring the kids. We'll see, right? Anyway, Pocahontas, in the movie Pocahontas, there's this moment where she's running through the forest with John Smith by the hand, and she sings this beautiful song, "Colors of the Wind," which I won't sing, but she says the lyric is, "If you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you learn things you never knew you never knew."
Yep.
Powerful lyric. The things you never knew you never knew. That's you right. See, there's loads of stuff out there that I don't know and you don't know. There's infinitely more stuff that we don't even know that we don't know. That's so how do we stumble across stuff that we don't even know we don't know in the first place? And the answer to that is read and study. If I read a book by Scott, you read a book by Colm, you learn stuff you never knew, and I learned stuff I never knew. Never knew. So that's what it's about.
Reading the books, reading things that you wouldn't. I'll just say there's the New York Times bestseller list, right? And you got to read what's the most current book? What's the newest book? Who's the hot author that's out there? So we all read the same book. So we're all hearing the same story. But if you were to take a book, I'm a big fan actually of old books. I actually don't read a lot of new books. I'll read books that were published 50, 100 years ago or longer. Because I'm trying to get someone's perspective, trying to get a different perspective. And I think, and I just actually have a book that is called Threnody. And actually what I did is I added some comments, but have some transcriptions of poems that were written in the 19th century by Josiah Gilbert Holland. And actually what I really wanted to do is I wanted to do an audiobook, but I had to have a Kindle version before I could do the audiobook. And so, and I put that on there, but the subtitle of it is 19th Century Sensibility Proves that People Have Not Changed. Okay. And so you kind of see the struggles that people had, the relationships, those haven't changed. Our technology has changed. We're meeting on Zoom instead of face-to-face in a cafe somewhere, but we're in this case we're on an Amazon Live, but the concept is that the people haven't changed, our tools have changed, but who we are hasn't changed. And I only get that by looking at different perspectives.
So true. So true.
And we talked about not being the lone giant redwood, because that's going to topple over. If you've ever seen one of those things that's blown down, those roots are not deep. For a tree that's hundreds of feet tall, those roots are maybe a dozen feet deep. They're not. They're so they do need each other.
but they spread out and they intermingle, isn't that right? That's what holds them
and
together,
so point number 7 was get good people on your team, and that you
So
spell out team as together everyone achieves more.
Yep, that's not my own. I borrowed that from somebody else. But
Well,
it's
you
so
know,
true.
they said as an undergraduate student, it's called plagiarism.
Yes, it
As a
is.
graduate student, it's called research, and in business we call it leverage.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
so I can just leverage this.
Yeah. But it's so true. I mean, we need good people in our team. You see, the wonderful thing about this, and congratulations on the global tea break and all the good work that you're involved in. But you know, I know that if I can reach out to you, if it were appropriate. In fact, you know, I've met some wonderful people through the global tea break. Drew Shockley and I are looking at collaboration at this moment in time. So it's fabulous. Yeah. So it's about getting good people on your team. None of us. I don't want to be a lone ranger. You know, what is it? The other phrase is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
That's right.
And I want to go far.
Yeah, and it's you know, you've talked too about you have a team, you have a big team, you had a big team, then you had a small team, and it's very different. And I used to have a big team. I was managing 2 sites of supply chain operations for Hewlett Packard, and it's lots of people, and lots of my payroll was $4.5 million a year, and you know.
Did you mean your paycheck? No.
Yeah, I wish it was my paycheck. I should have been paid a small commission on each check, but you know, I take those kind of responsibilities very personally. That those are families. You know, I'm representing families. I was running I was general manager for an upholstered furniture company. Actually, we sold about 90% of what we built to IKEA. So we were essentially an IKEA manufacturer. And I take people, and we had this platform where you could look out over this 170,000 square foot facility. It was huge. And we had 150 employees out there. And I just said, I am responsible for 150 families.
Wow.
You know,
but
you know, you have this team, and you start learning what they're good at. And you have a big team, and then you have a small team. And then when you work by yourself, I have a mirror. And but getting the right people.
But I would suggest to you, if I may, Scott, that I understand when we work for ourselves, we've got a mirror, but we've also got all the other good people in our network that we can reach out to that we don't necessarily hire or indeed even pay. But you know, we've got support. We've got, you know, if I'm having a tough day, I could reach out to you or reach out to Alan or whomever, you know.
That's right. Yeah, that's we are all in this together. And that's what I love about the networking aspect is that I can build a virtual company.
Yeah.
Like with Drew Shockley, I could pull Drew in because he's a web guy. I know he can build and I tell you, I do not want to touch those. Or David Brown, or you know, there's any number of people that I could bring in.
In fact, now that you mentioned those, there's 4 of us. There's yourself, myself, David, and Drew. Like that could be a dream team. You never know.
You know, there's some. We could do some damage.
We could do some damage. I love that.
The other point, and point number 8 is deal with the issues. And nobody likes conflict. Well, very few people seek it out anyway. But deal with the issues. Talk about that for a moment.
Well, lest anybody think my life is perfect, I had some issues to deal with today. Okay, in my school meals business, and so I told you earlier I was driving to Dublin. I was on a Zoom call in Wigwam. Happy as the day is long. I was loving life in that moment. Everything was great. You know, I was multitasking, driving up the motorway, and my new business Wigwam was happening without me. I was a participant. That's my dream life, right? And then when I got to Dublin, I checked in with somebody in Carambola and realized there was a significant challenge had unfolded while I was on the drive, right? That needed handling. And so within a half an hour, we called a Zoom meeting of a handful of key players, and we talked through the facts, and we said, okay, this and this needs to happen. Who's taking that piece? And then, I checked in at 4:30 on my way back. Has that been done? That been done? That been done? Yes, it has. And then tomorrow there's another element that needs to happen. So that's the point. When it comes up. Now, let's not confuse this with knee jerking and bouncing all around the place like Tigger, trying to figure everything out. We don't need that, right? But if something is significant, and you'll know what significant is in your own world, well, then you got to grab hold of it and don't brush it under the carpet. That's the point, right?
Right.
Because if you brush it under the carpet, it's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. Grab hold of it. You said it earlier, make a decision. Make a decision and live or die by that decision, because no decision is a decision. Doing nothing is doing something.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep. And I loved you tell a story about Richard Branson in how he dealt with an issue. But it is just stepping up and taking responsibility, especially as the leader, right?
Yeah.
Your role is to take the stones and arrows, deserved or undeserved.
That's it.
And I remember another business I was running as a chief operating officer. We had a customer that they always wanted printed 2 copies of their invoice. Okay, this is no big deal. So you put in that second copy. Well, she was the kind of person that when things didn't happen exactly the right way, boy, she was on the phone and let you have it. And so her order showed up. She got 1 copy of the invoice. Boy, she was on that phone. And I remember taking that call and I as soon as I heard it, I'm like, I'll take that call. I'll take the call. I told her, this is completely my mistake. I apologize that this is what happened. Yeah, and it diffused the whole thing. I mean, she was looking for an argument. She was looking for someone to defend themselves. And it's like, hey, just make a photocopy. Come on. You don't need to, why do we need to do your work for you?
Yeah.
But you just said, no, this was my fault. It wasn't my shipping department. This was something that I'm responsible for. And I tell you, we actually ended up having a great conversation.
Yeah, good.
Because it's not, look, it's me. It's not you.
Yeah, my dad always said, has always said, he's 82 now, but he was in sales all his life, and he always said that when there's a problem in a relationship, right, when a problem manifests a bit like that one you've just described, the relationship will never be the same again. The only question is it going to improve or disimprove? And that's down to how you handle it. Okay. Yeah. And in that case, you handled it. You stepped up. The other thing, and just on that point, if I may, I met a guy here recently, actually an American citizen who's living here in Ireland. And I know himself and his wife, both from the States. And he's self-employed. He's the small business owner that we spoke about. And he's got a crew of guys, right? But he doesn't allow them, by his own admission, go and do a job on their own. He's always got to be there. And we spoke about that briefly. And he said, well, they might make a mistake. They mightn't see a problem that I would see. And I said, okay, I accept that. That is true. So he said, they might make a mistake that I'll end up paying for or having to be responsible for. I said, yes. What's the problem? And he said, and of course, because we were talking about how he's going to scale his business. And he said, well, if I train these guys to my level, he says, they could leave and take clients with you. And I said, yes, and that's going to happen too. So what's the problem? Right? Yeah. But the point is, all of that's going to happen. If you step up and to be the leader, you can either stand alone, be the Lone Ranger and do it all yourself for the rest of your life, or you can allow somebody else take some of the, of the workload, but you've got to take responsibility. And when they mess up, it's not their fault, it's your fault. But if you make peace with that, you'll find more good people than bad people. You'll find people doing more good work than poor work. So it's going to be fine.
Yeah. In my department, I often had people get promoted. And moved to another jobs. Well, that left a hole for me to fill.
Yep.
But on the other hand, I had good people waiting to come in because they knew this was not a dead end organization.
Yeah.
That they would get the development that they need. And if they wanted to, and not everyone wants to, but they could get promoted out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, training people and giving them the experience so that they can go out and do this.
Yeah. In fact, Richard Branson, I'll finish this point, but Richard Branson actually said that. He said, train your people so they could leave you and treat them well enough so they won't want to.
I love that. That's exactly right. So we talked about this briefly too, about point number 9 was choose to never lose.
Yes, we spoke about that at the very start. Sometimes I win, sometimes I learn.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Professionals never lose. They win or they learn. That's it. So choose to be professional.
Yeah. And I think that the part of it too is our perspective. And you talk about living in a world of scarcity or scarcity of abundance, or, or a world of abundance, right? So it's scarcity or abundance. When scarcity, there's winners and losers. And in abundance, there's winners and winners.
Yeah.
Or in this case, maybe winners and learners. But it's actually, there was research out of the University of Texas at Austin, actually in the marketing department. And so not all evil comes out of marketing. They were actually doing this work that talked about the satisfaction or the happiness level of people was dependent on that perspective. And if you live in this world of scarcity, you will be less happy than if you live in a world of abundance. And I'll tell you what, there is more business than any one of us could handle. So there really is no competition, but we help each other out. So choose to never lose. The last one is be thankful and believe.
Yeah, I don't think I'm speaking for myself, but I don't think I'm near grateful enough for what's going well in my life. If you were to look at a wall, imagine a wall that's painted white. So you look at the wall that's painted white, and your eye will be drawn to the dent in the wall where somebody scuffed it with something, right? Mm-hmm. And what you end up seeing is the black mark on the wall, right. And you actually miss the wonderful expanse of white. And if I'm ever talking to groups live, I would use an example like that, particularly with teenagers. I'd get them to look at a big wall, and I'd point out, do you see that scuff mark there? And that's all they can see. So this is your life. That's your life, right? All that stuff, all that white is everything that's going well for you. What are you focused on? You're focused on the scuff mark. So I think we all need to be a little more grateful than we demonstrate, me included. And then I recommend there are 3 things we should consider believing in. The first of which is a higher power, God, the universe. I'm not preaching. I'm just suggesting we should consider believing that there's more to life than just what we're experiencing now. Yeah. And that we're here for a reason. And you have a role to play, and I have a role to play to make this mote of dust that we live on a better place for those coming behind us.
That's right.
So be more grateful. And 3 things. Number 1, believe in a higher power. I recommend you consider believing in a higher power, because it changes then the focus of what you do and why you do it. Second thing, I recommend we believe in the inherent goodness of most people. Most people are good souls. Most people want to help you. There are some bad people out there, regrettably, but they are few and far between. And they're sad and they're lonely and they're tragic, and they get off on making the rest of us feel bad or doing bad stuff. But let's not tar everybody with that brush. Let's assume that most people are in fact good. Right. So believe in a higher power, believe in the inherent goodness of most people. And then finally, most importantly, and we'll finish on this, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself, because there's something in this world today that only you can do. That only you can do in only the way that you can do it. You and I could speak the same words, exactly the same words, to 2 different audiences, and we'd have a different response, because it'll land differently because Scott Smith says it, right? So you've got to be true to yourself. Believe in you. You've got a role to play. I don't know what that is. I don't even know what it is for me. I'm just open to it. Right? I'm just open to the future, and so believe in yourself absolutely, and then go out there and meet people and do good and see where it all leads.
I love it. I love it. That is a great place to wind down. I could just keep going on, but I do want people. Here we are on Amazon Live. We do have your book featured down here, so people can buy that. They can get the uh, 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 paperback, get the physical edition. They can get the Kindle edition, and I encourage you, get the book, read the story, get the details there, and take these 10 things into account, and especially to believe in yourself. So believe in the higher power, believe that people want to do good, and believe in yourself. I just I just can't think of a better place to wind up. Thank you for the time, being generous with your time, and obviously people can buy your book right here on Amazon. What's another good way to get a hold of you if they're interested? Because you would be a great, obviously you're on podcast, so be a great guest there.
Yeah, look, I talk to anybody. I'm very happily talk to anybody. I'm happy to share my story, but I'm really interested in other people's story too. I mean that's what it's all about. It's give and take. If people Google Colm O'Brien motivation, it's probably the easiest way. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Colm O'Brien Motivation will find my stuff. I also have an audio version of the book if the Irish accent is something people might be interested in. So it's me reading the story. And if somebody wants to reach out to me, I will actually gift them that for free. If anybody wants to reach out, send them, if they send me an email, colm@colmobrienmotivation.com, I'll happily send them a link. Or in fact, just simply connect with me on LinkedIn and I will happily give them a link to my audiobook for free.
Well, once again, I just I will let you run off to your family, hang out for a moment. We'll jump out and we'll end this broadcast. But again, thank you so much. And so the book right here is Feeding Johnny: How to Build a Business Despite the Roadblocks by Colm O'Brien. He's been our guest today. And so I thank everybody for watching today.